And we're live. Mike, how's it going?
It's great. How are you, Dan?
I am doing pretty good, although it has been uh like beautiful here all week. Like 50s to 60s and sunny, except for today, which is rainy and gross. So other than that, doing very well though. I know it's still quite cold where you are, right?
No, it's not. It's
Mm.
bizarre for February. Like we should be coming out of the coldest time of year. I usually think of as like the last week of January, first week of February, but it's got to be like 45 today. Like it's
That's cold,
incredible.
Mike.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Right,
I would
relative.
not expect it to be above freezing at this time of year. Like that's very odd. Usually like the third week of March we'll get like one weekend where it gets warm and stuff starts to melt and it makes you think that spring's here even though it's not doesn't come until like May.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, but do you run year round outside?
I do, yeah. And I don't
Yeah, so
like it,
like
but I do it.
well, I was going to say like you're in an area where you can do that. Like even the coldest days are not terrible.
Right. It really rarely gets below 30 degrees. So, and I if it's above 30, I can run just fine. I will say,
Mhm.
we spend a lot of December usually in St. Louis, and it gets much, much colder there. And then we also used to live there. And uh I would still run outside. I mean, if I had access to a treadmill, a lot of times I would take that option. But I didn't for a lot of the time we lived there, and also during COVID and things like that. I just couldn't really like, go to a gym. Um, and the last winter we lived there, there was a week where it didn't get over like 4 degrees for the whole week, and I went for a run one day, and my hands. I had 2 layers of gloves on, but my hands got so cold that when I got back, I like couldn't feel them at all, and and we were actually like concerned, like
Yeah,
that
for
I
sure.
had
Yeah.
some like long term damage. But then like the blood started to like flow back or whatever's happening there. I'm not a biologist, but
Yeah.
and the pain of my hands like warming up, like it felt like when the blood was flowing back into them, that like it felt like I had like needles in my skin or something. It was so terrible.
Yeah. You're
So now
probably
I
lucky
have.
you didn't have long-term damage there. That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I was out there for probably less than an hour, which is probably why that it wasn't worse, but, so now if it's below 20, no matter where I am, it's pretty much a no. So,
Mm,
but
yeah.
other than that, I'm out there.
It's a great way to see the world
Yeah,
out
right, right.
exercising. Yeah.
That loop that, I go on every day is, I'm getting, the same views, although I will say, we live, like, right in the forest, so, it literally every day that I run is, like, a beautiful run, so, um, makes
Yeah,
it hard to do
in a
somewhere else.
different lifetime, like more than 15 years ago, I was big into cycling. And like
Mhm.
that, I pretty much wouldn't go out if I wasn't doing at least like 30 miles. And so
Yeah.
like you can do a lot of different routes, especially this part of the country is great for biking because they pave all of the country roads because
Mm.
of the dairy farms transporting milk on the roads. So there's just
Oh,
a ton of
interesting.
paved roads that are not traveled that are available for biking.
That is really cool. I, there's really great cycling around here as well, but a lot of folks, and including myself, I have a gravel bike, um, which or a cyclocross bike, which is, I guess, kinda like, I mean, it's not new now, but, over the last, like, decade, is kind of like a newer concept where it's like, uh, sort of like mountain bike ruggedness with road bike geometry, and, that is, like, so much fun. So we actually like the gravel around here, like, it's like a pro that the
Yeah.
roads are unpaved, but most of the folks I am not, that skilled of a cyclist, so, a lot of times I'm not willing to, go on some of the routes that other folks are, but people are quite into it around here.
Yeah, don't break your digits. We need you at the
Yeah,
keyboard.
right, right. Seriously, that is one reason why I like running, is my hands are generally out of harm's way, but, uh, you never know, so, um, we were just talking about before we jumped on that you have a concert tomorrow. Um, tell me a little bit about it.
Yeah, we're playing a Pixar show. So the Madison Symphony is one of the two orchestras I play in. They booked this, I think I don't know exactly how it works, but the way I perceive it to work is you buy a package that is like the video and audio and the music, and then you put on the show, right? So like there's a big screen above us playing like all these Pixar, like 20 Pixar films, like Cars and The Incredibles and Monsters Inc. and the Toy Story and Coco and just like a bunch of Up, Inside Out, all kinds of stuff. And there's like some kind of montage that like recaps the movie, and we play the orchestra score underneath it. I think the speaking's up there, the sound effects are up there. I'm not
Mm.
quite sure. Um, but it's crazy in the orchestra because all that stuff's super fast and there's all these transitions that turn on a dime, and like some people are wearing headphones and have a click track, like the bass, the electric bass, the drum set, the keys, electric keyboard, and the conductor. But then the rest of the orchestra doesn't have a click track, and so like trying to keep those two groups together while you're making all these changes, and it is like it's the most like instinctive playing that I've ever done. Like there is not time to think about like setting up to come in on the right notes or like reading the right. You just play the music in front of you and try to keep up, and it's a ton of fun. So I'm
Yeah,
excited.
that's awesome. I am a big fan of Pixar movies. What is your favorite of the ones they are playing?
I have not watched a lot of them. I think that they're a little bit after my time,
Mm.
so I don't know that I have any personal
Oh
connection to
no.
them. Is
Do
that
you, have
bad?
you seen The Incredibles?
No, I've not.
Oh man, you've got to watch that. It's not my favorite movie of all time. It's my favorite animated movie for sure.
Uh-huh.
Um, so you might
Well, so
have to check
that
that one out.
the music for that is crazy because like it must be something to do with like secret agents or something,
Yeah.
because like there is like the James Bond themes definitely in there, and like that's part of the interesting thing about it. There's all these quotes in there. There's some movie has a lot of jazz score to it, and there's a bunch of like Rhapsody in Blue licks that are in there. The Monsters University, did you ever see that one?
No, I've only seen Monsters Inc.
So that one's pretty cool because I haven't seen the movie, but the music you can tell like um, other movies about universities that when they're like touring campus and stuff, there's kind of like this style of music that I never noticed before. But then we play it, and I'm like, and it ends with like marching band tunes.
Yeah.
They must be like at the football game or something at the end of it. So it is kind of interesting to hear all the tunes and then like wonder what's going on, because I'm actually behind the screen. It's above.
Oh,
It's like
okay.
maybe
Uh-huh.
5 feet in front of me and above us, so I can't actually see anything that's going on.
Oh, interesting. How for the folks that have the headphones in, I'm
Mhm,
I'm curious because I'm interested in getting some new headphones because I
mhm.
have these are the Sony MDRs, which are like really popular for like audio mixing and things like that. And I like the sound of them. Uh, but I think just any over ear headphones are gonna give me a headache.
Yeah,
Do y'all wear in ear monitors when
yeah,
y'all perform? Yeah.
they all have in-ear monitors. I've worn them before, like, we did a Led Zeppelin show a few years ago, and everyone in the orchestra had in-ear monitors for that.
Hmm.
Was that one? Maybe that one might have been headphones. I don't know. I've done either or,
Yeah.
and it's nice because you have control over the volume. Like, when we play opera and
Oh,
other things in the pit, there are overhead monitors, and I sit, like, literally, like, this far from the overhead monitor, but the monitor's for, like, everyone in front of me too, so, like, 15 feet in front of me, and so there's
oh,
always this
geez.
fight about how loud that monitor should be, because like, I don't want it up really loud. I generally wear earplugs when I play just to protect my hearing anyway, but,
Mm-hmm.
I think I think the in-ear monitors are far superior in every way.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I've heard that they can also be kind of uncomfortable too, though. Have you had a good experience with them?
The traveling shows where they have traveling musicians, or definitely the conductor has in-ear monitors so you can hear like all the keys for like the Broadway shows. They have custom molded ones. And
Mm.
that's actually like on my list, is you can get custom molded earplugs, which are
Oh,
like it's like a hearing aid. They take a mold of your ear, but instead of putting electronics and an amplifier in it, they put a very special decibel filter. And I mean,
oh,
I have a pair of like not custom made that have a decibel filter in it. They're pretty neat because you can still hear quite a lot of stuff, but it cuts out the like damaging level of sound.
that's really neat. Wow. Cool. Well, I might have to do some research. See if I can find something that works well. Um, cool. Well, what'd you work on this week?
I have big news. The reference design template on which all of our reference designs are built has just hit version 2.0.0, which has migrated over to the Golioth firmware SDK, which we talked about a few weeks ago. And I'm excited about it because it simplifies a ton of what we had in there. And so I think it's a lot easier to like walk through it and understand what's going on in the code. And I know what we're working on internally, and looking at this, we're really set up for like adding a ton of stuff without like upending the rowboat.
Right. Right. Was the what was the hardest part about getting it migrated over?
I think just we implemented everything that Goliath has to offer in this. So there isn't a single thing that didn't get affected by changing over
Mm,
to it. So it's like making sure that everything got changed the way that it should and then doing the testing for it. I think some of it was really pleasant, like firmware update, over the air update basically got rid of a ton of stuff in user space that really no one needed to change, or very few people need to change. And so now it's like a 2-line thing for over the air update. You just give it a number, like a version number, and then call the Golioth init firmware update API call, whatever API call that might be.
awesome.
Yeah, I think some of the other stuff, we were already set up with ZCBOR, like sometime in the distant past, or what seems like the distant past now, we moved from using QCBOR for CBOR serialization to using ZCBOR. These are libraries available in Zephyr. And so all of our like remote procedure calls and setting service where you really need to use CBOR, we're already transitioned to that. So it really just made API call changes. So like the callbacks have a few different attributes to them, and changing the API calls, changing all of the header files, changing all of the kconfig symbols. But at the same time, like I said, it's all simplification stuff, and I think it makes it a lot easier to look at too. So for instance, if you're in the prj.conf file, there's like one line to turn on the Golioth library in general, and then there's like one line for each of the services, and the name of the service is in there.
Mm,
So if you need to send stream data, you call config Golioth stream, and if you need to turn on Golioth settings, you call config Golioth settings and RPC. And so I think I mentioned before when we were talking about the cross-platform SDK having general availability for Zephyr is like everything's just a little bit more intuitive now. Like once you see the naming scheme for one thing, you can pretty much bank it's going to be that naming scheme for everything else. Same with header files. So our header files were kind of like all over the map on what the format of the include was. And now all of them are Golioth directory / and the header that you need.
mm.
And that to me seems very intuitive.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, that's really great to see. And just, for everyone who may not be familiar with the reference design template, it is totally open source. So you can go and build your own reference design or your own product on top of it, which I know that Mike gave a demo earlier of some of the changes here. And I think one of the common themes was people feeling like, oh, well, I have an idea for something I want to build using this just internally at the company. So that's really awesome.
Yeah, and I think we'll have news here in the near future about even more availability of this reference design template. Right now, it's a thing that you can go use, and a lot of our customers do start there, even if they end up starting with a blank code base later. Like it will very quickly get you to proof of concept for your internal team to be like, does Golioth do the things that we need it to, and what does that look like? Like those questions you can answer in an afternoon very easily using it. We do have companies that started with the reference design template and just built on top of that because they didn't have a code base already in place. And this kind of has everything for you. It separates all the services out into their own folders. So if you don't need one of the services, you can turn it off, you can delete it, whatever you want to do, or move stuff around. And if you look at the samples that are in our firmware SDK, they're very granular. So we have a sample that is logging, and it just shows you the different types of logging. We have a sample that's setting. So this kind of like smushes all of them together, but they're still in single files. So if you do have your own code base and you're like, I wonder how I make setting service and RPC service coexist on the same application, like you can go and look at the reference design template and see kind of the approach that we take to it.
That's really cool. Yeah, I think that as someone who is kind of coming into firmware with less experience when I joined Goliath, seeing those like end-to-end applications or more integrated applications is really helpful because there's like kind of like a step function between like Blinky or let's say like use one service to send one value, or send a value in a loop or something like that. To like, oh, this is a working application that's serving some purpose. So you can see like, this is what I'm trying to accomplish, and this is the code that is correlated to that, right? Rather than just like what I'm trying to accomplish is making anything work. It's kind of a different scenario there. So I think us having those really simple script examples, as well as this more like end-to-end experience, is super valuable for folks.
Yeah, I
You
agree.
You also had led a training this week, right?
Yeah, we did another Zephyr training this week. We do that every month. And if you go to goliath.io/training-sign up, I should have like a cheat sheet of URLs every time we do this stream. But you could sign up for the next one. I think the next one is in March. And I want to say that it is March 20th at 11 a.m. Central, 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern, and available wherever your time zone converter tools can convert for you. But those are free. We have you get either the one of two Nordic boards. There's the 7002 DK is a Wi-Fi board, or the 9160 DK is the cellular board. And then you get to try out a bunch of Goliath code at the beginning and see information go back and forth between the device and our cloud. And then we move into compiling Zephyr code, like compiling Hello World, adding logging so you can see how logging works in it, adding an LED to the device tree so you can kind of get some experience with the device tree, making the LED blink, then using threads to make it blink and using timers to make it blink, just kind of exposing like the Zephyr ecosystem. So how does CMake work? How does device tree work? How does the West meta tool work? And then the kind of more general like RTOS concepts of, what's the abstraction look like for hardware, and how do you deal with like the scheduler and concurrency?
Awesome. Were there any takeaways from training that were new or different? I always like to hear after training, we obviously introduce new features a lot of times between trainings that can lead to different feedback, but also just a different group of people. Was there anything coming out of this one that was kind of like a key takeaway for you?
Well, so maybe selfishly, I like it when people have problems because it gives me ideas on things that we can do better. So, for instance, and we're getting really good now. Like there are not very many problems that we haven't seen, and so like there were no new problems this time. But there was one gentleman who had a NRF 9160 DK, which is cellular, and it was not. Was it cellular? No, he had the Wi-Fi. So with cellular, a lot of times you wonder if there is a problem with location in the world, because there are a couple of different standards for IoT devices. There's LTE-M and NB-IoT, and if you're in certain parts of the world, LTE-M will not be present. And Zephyr has a fallback. It tries LTE-M first, and then it falls back to NB-IoT, but it's a 10-minute timeout, which is a real bummer when you're like sitting there looking at it. And we use precompiled binaries for the first thing in the training. And so if someone needs NB-IoT and they have to wait for that 10-minute fallback, it's basically nonsense. But you can recompile it and tell it to use NB-IoT. So one of the things on my list from previous trainings is just figure out if there's a better way to fall back on that. It would almost be nice if, when you're in a mode where you're trying to get a network setting and you can't, if you could like press a button and have it switch over to try and use the other one. So I think that's one of the things we're looking at. Another one I'm going to work on in the next sprint. So this gentleman that had the 7002 it looked like he was getting an IP address and connecting to Wi-Fi. Oftentimes it's like, is your AP set up to actually connect with this device? That can be a problem. but it wouldn't connect to Goliath, and it was having these handshake errors, and people were like scratching their heads, and I'm like, this someone else started helping him and was like, we checked to make sure the credentials are stored on the device, and they are, and they match what's on the website and stuff. What happened was, when you set up a project, you can have it automatically name the project, and it names it like 3 random words. And then when you add a device, same thing. It's like 3 random words for that device. And then when you create credentials, it will take the date stamp and the 3 random names of the device, the @ symbol, and then the 3 random names of the project, and make that your PSK. And the problem was that PSK was then too long for the limits that the device had been compiled for. But there's no error message. When you store it, it allows you to store it that full length. When you read it back, it reads it back that full length. But when it sets up the DTLS handshake, it like truncates it and doesn't say like, hey, you just passed me something that's too long. So before we do our next training, and actually in kind of my next priority is to make an error message, that because we know what that length is at compile time. And so when you try to store something that's too long, we'll throw an error message.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that could be super helpful. I like problems like that because there's like different layers of solutions. So like that error would be a great like solution tackling the like apparent problem, I guess. And then like other things we could do is by default like truncate, your the device credentials, or use a different, random identifier, or, expose some sort of warning or something like that. Like, our firmware SDK by default has this limit. So there's a couple different things I think we could do. And a lot of times that is the case with, I think, things that folks run into. There's like multiple steps we can take at different parts of the stack to improve the experience. So that's always really cool.
Yeah, and this app is being pre-compiled just for training. So what I could do is crank that value up from the default. Like if it's defaulting at 32, I could default it at 64 or 128. Like it really doesn't matter for this one application. But we're very conscious about using your device resources with our SDK. And so we don't want to just take the SDK and crank that value, because it's going to hold on to that memory for the entire runtime of the program. And that means less RAM for you to be able to use.
Right. That's a really good point. Well, cool. Well, that definitely seems like a good actionable takeaway for this training.
It was, and just like a ton of I love hearing about people's use cases too. So just like talking to people and like, why are you going into that? Like, it's a very cool time to be in Zephyr right now because all the cool kids are getting into it, and so you get to hear these engineers and these companies that are like working on very neat things.
Right. Well, cool. That's awesome. We also had a feature announcement this week that I think we're going to chat about today. And I didn't tell Mike this beforehand, but I'm going to need some participation from him to show this off.
Okay.
Excellent. So here's the blog post that went out yesterday. Wow, that seems like a long time ago. But the feature that we launched is usage visualization. And so now in the Golioth console, you can go into your organization settings page and go over to usage, and we'll show this in a minute, and kind of see how different projects are using Golioth, what services are being used. And I think there's some interesting engineering as well behind how we're able to show data that is effectively real time while also not incurring a huge cost of always calculating that data every time you ask for it. So I thought what we would do here is I was looking through my organizations and projects that I have in the Golioth console for my account, and I realized we still had our badge case project that you're a user on. And so to demonstrate some of the real-time functionality, what I thought we could do is I'll share my screen and we can go and poke around the console. And while we're doing that, you can get some credentials and run either if you want to use real hardware or you want to just use the co-op CLI or something like that and start doing some interaction with the data. We can see that actually show up in the console.
You know what I would love to do, and I'm not sure if this is in your mind, but I would love to see how quickly we can take a cellular board with nothing on it and get it running the reference design template with credentials. I bet it can be like a
Let's do
matter
it.
of single-digit minutes.
Let's do it. Well, do you want
Yeah.
to start off then with getting the reference design going? Do you want to share first?
Sure, I can. I do want to say, though, I'm super excited about this announcement for usage because you and the cloud team are always doing such awesome work that nobody really like sees. Like everyone benefits from it, but you don't like this looks cool and it's information that like everybody wants like now. So like this is to me a huge improvement to the platform, and it's great to like everyone will look at it and appreciate it immediately.
For sure. And one of the nice things is like in my opinion, having worked on it, we have some pretty rudimentary charts right now, or a chart really. But there is lots of filtering and different types of aggregation we can do to show off different dimensions of your data, and also do roll-ups and things like that, as well as potentially in the future saying, hey, I want to look at exactly what this single device is using. So lots of fun stuff we can do there that we haven't quite tapped into yet. So just the beginning. If you have feedback, let us know, and we'll certainly do that. But let's adapt that reference design.
Yeah, let me just pause my Slack so I'm not leaking Slack notifications on our present. So first of all, I just pulled 9160 in the box with nothing on it. It does have an activated SIM card already in it. So that is the one like
you're cheating,
thing
Mike.
that you would, I know, totally cheating. Don't think I have any embarrassing tabs open that people can see. All right, cool. So I do like to do everything from the terminal. And so I'll get my NRF, let's see, like this, NRF. There we go. NRF connect. Is that it? Did it go? Magic words. Is it not running? There we go. All right, it's coming up. So these are the NRF Connect desktop tools for flashing your device. And so I'll open up the programmer just like that, and I'm going to grab a new Firefox window, hopefully. All right, Firefox and GitHub Golioth reference design template. And down in this release window over here, we have precompiled binaries for different boards. And so it's actually the full hex. The update bin is for doing over-the-air updates. So the full has like the bootloader and everything in it. So I'm going to grab the full and I'm going to download that. And I had already downloaded it, but I'm downloading it again. And I'm going to get mine still in the plastic wrap, although I have recently used this, like I said. So unwrapping the board. Are you timing? Did we start a timer?
I did not start a timer, but I have let's say you start at 2:25 Eastern.
Okay.
So you're 3 minutes in.
All right. So I plugged in and turned on the board and I selected up here. I add a file from my downloads. Let's see. Recently modified. There it is. Reference design. Let's open that up. There you can see it put all the good stuff in there, and erase and write. And while it's working on that, there is a serial terminal. Look at this. I'm not even using the black screen that my beloved Minicom. All right. We are connected, and I think we're ready for credentials, right?
I think so. And you still have your Audel mic device in there that we can use. I am cool. Also behind the scenes here, setting up a output stream so that we can see some of that data flowing through too.
Who owns the template? Oh, the Barrett badge case. There it is. All right. I found it. Sorry for asking. Audel mic. All right. I'm going to use that one unless you want me to use a new one.
Oh, no, that's fine.
Okay. So we put in our so I put in the PSK ID. Now I'm going to put in the PSK, and these are just getting stored on flash on the device in the settings partition. reboot it. And it's working on getting a cellular connection here. There we go. Current firmware 2.0.0, and it is downloading a, we have firmware rolled out. So it's already downloading a firmware update. I'm going to unroll this out. And then I will reset the board.
Cool.
All right, so that's firmware update. Works great unless you don't mean it to, to update to the device. But yeah, so that we went from off the shelf to connected to Golioth in 7 minutes.
7 minutes?
5 minutes? I don't know, something like that, yeah.
And I bet, let me see here. I just set up a new bucket in Influx for, oh wow, I'm already seeing your usage here.
Huh. Should be sending stuff, right?
It's definitely getting logs.
Oh, you know what? Let's see. What is our device setting? It's set to 60 seconds because we don't have a device setting in here yet. So let me just add this. So the reference design template checks with the server for how often it should be taking sensor readings, and it defaults to 1 minute to 60 seconds. So let's put it on every 5 seconds, and we should see the device say something. Maybe. Settings, out of sync. That's not it. Do we not have a network connection? Yeah, connecting to LTE, this may take some time. So I think we're not connected to the cell network right now.
It says connected there.
There we go. All right, now we got everything. Now we're connected. And
nice.
You can see here we're setting loop delay to 5 seconds. So we reset that, and we should now see streaming data coming in. Perfect.
All right.
And we can bump that up too. 5 seconds is no fun.
Cool.
Let's do it every second. All right, and the device got it. And we should be seeing tons of stuff coming. All right, take it away, Dan.
Cool. All right, well, I'm going to go to the same place in the console here, but I am the administrator of this organization. So I'm going to get a little more view here. All right, so this is in the same organization. I'm in a different project right now, but I'm going to go over and go into the badge case org here. And if I go into project settings, while Mike was doing that, I actually set up this Influx output stream here. And we can actually see probably that the data is coming through here. Let's see. I think that I always get confused with Influx, but I'm pretty sure. How do I select the measurement? Oh, that's strange. It just duplicates it. There we go. No field name. No field name time.
So I am an Influx database noob. I have not used it before. SQL is the closest I've gotten to Influx or Mongo. So tell me, extol the virtues of Influx versus the OG MySQL.
So Influx is a time series database, and I actually don't know that much about Influx either. I've primarily used Timescale, but I did just set up this bucket. There we go. All right. Well, I think it was just refreshing. But anyway, we can see your info coming in here. And here's the test event. So basically the columns are fields in the payload that are getting translated via or to this protocol called line protocol that Influx uses. And you can see actually we've gotten quite a few of these sensor readings here. So we can see the device ID, the project ID is badge case, and then the sensor counter and time here. And you can do all sorts of interesting queries here. I don't know if I think Influx is, I don't think it's built on another database. I might be wrong about that. I think it might be like a homegrown database.
Okay.
But you having it likely offers similar things to other time series databases where you can do interesting aggregations and things like that, and it's very write heavy in terms of you're getting a lot of writes to the database for points in time, and then you likely want to look at that at some aggregated on some period of time. Actually, not too dissimilar from what we're doing with the usage data, right? We're recording a lot of timestamp data points about usage of services and then showing an aggregation. So anyway, cool to see that running, and you can see we're getting up there into the almost 200 sensor readings. But the part that Mike is not able to see is in this organization, we have our org settings page and just some information about the org, and I'm on a custom tier here. And over in usage is where you're going to find information about usage across projects in your organization. And if I go into usage, we can see that this project doesn't have too much usage, but we can already see that if we hover over that first project I was in, demo-1F3973, on the 21st of February, used 1,383 kilobytes of data and a variety of other things. I was just doing some tests with OTA to show this. But today, February 23rd, I can look and see that we have a variety of data that we're recording here because the demo that Mike is showing there is doing a number of things. So we have done some OTA. We have device logs, so 58 kilobytes there, and then 33 kilobytes going to Influx. And if I refresh the page, let's see that our 33, 58, 373, we'll probably see that jump up a little bit. So yeah, 42, 69, 373. So as those are coming in, we're getting real-time updates here.
Fantastic.
But we're also able to see over time. Yeah, it's real time in that when you refresh, you get the latest data. It's not live updating at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, so, and you can tune things in this way. So for instance, like you don't realize, oh, I've got all my logs cranked up to debug level, and so I'm actually sending things over my cellular data. And if you want to conserve that, we actually have a reset logs level RPC with the reference design template. So I could send a command remotely to the board and say, hey, stop streaming me all of your logs. Only send me errors, or don't even send me errors if you don't want to.
Right. Absolutely. And like the being able to see this obviously isn't showing that much in this organization that I haven't been doing a bunch in since we started recording this data. But in some of the other ones, you can really see some outliers. And so, if you have a bug in your firmware that's causing, crazy consumption of stuff, it really sticks out. And if you have multiple projects as well, maybe it's a different project for a different product. Maybe it's a different project for a different iteration of a product, perhaps. Maybe you have, maybe you're like a dev shop or something like that, and you have a variety of different clients that are on different projects. You can kind of see that full usage here, which I think is really useful.
Yeah, man, this is a great work. Well done.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm excited for it to grow over time because, like we said earlier, it's pretty rudimentary here. But you can, look through the months and see how things change over time. But eventually, I think that we'll want to give some more details about, individual devices and that sort of thing. And then long term, I would love to have, this is not necessarily falling into the usage category here, but just debugging the traffic from a given device and being able to show some of that information so you can see, at the packet level, essentially what you're seeing. But that's more in a different realm. Than
it's a little bit beyond your basic usage.
Right, exactly. But it would have been helpful in that case, for example, in training, if you could look and see, what PSK is being used in the DTLS handshake, for example.
Oh, interesting.
You could see that it was being truncated. Although, there's a number of complexities there because we wouldn't have associated that with the proper device at that case. But you could see, what are you wouldn't have even associated with the project there. That's actually a
I
pretty
mean,
tricky thing
yeah.
to troubleshoot.
I was gonna say, yeah, that's a tough one, like where the failures happen. Because that's like when you go to recover an account and you put in your email address, like they don't tell you whether or not that's a valid email address associated with
Right.
your account, because that would be a way to like discover uh,
Right.
whether someone has an account or not. So I think, yeah, failing on those handshakes. I think one that I've experienced is when you've done the handshake, but you go to send a packet and the server responds that it was like an invalid
Mhm.
payload. Like knowing that that's happening from the server side rather than the device side might be really useful.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I definitely think so.
Because if you have a whole fleet of like 1,000 devices, are you going to notice the one error log that you got from your device that its payload was invalid? Probably
Right.
not.
Right. Yeah. I think just in general, visualization, we integrate really well with things like Grafana and stuff like that. But I think, in console visualization, which is just easier if it's already there, right? And you don't
Mhm.
have to get things set up. Also, with Grafana, we're primarily looking at, um, application data that's being sent through, like maybe those sensor readings. I think just starting to get visualization in the console opens up putting it in more places. I know, especially something that we've all kind of wanted for a while internally is some OTA visualization. So
Yeah, for
see
sure.
a
Yep.
graphical representation of what devices are on which version and which ones are
Mhm.
failing to upgrade and that sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to have that.
Yeah. I'll
I
get
mean,
right on
our
that.
yeah, I mean, our device networks that we're using for demonstration, I think probably our largest is like the Thingy 91, and it has 10 devices in that fleet or something like that. And so it's not too hard to page through those devices and see what version that they're actually on. But once you get beyond those, double digit numbers, like it does become a challenge. So I'm sure we'll have that in the road ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Cool. Well, Mike, I know you're going to be out of office for a little bit. But other than your error message on the truncated PSK ID, any other things kind of on the road ahead that you are able to or wanting to share today?
Well, our big focus right now with the firmware team is in testing. So we've talked on the stream before about having hardware in the loop testing, which we continue to make that more robust. And we're currently implementing some tests on the ESP IDF side that are more granular. Like we had like the granddaddy of all tests that tested like everything that ESP IDF could possibly do, but like going through and having granular samples that can be tested that way, but then also having unit tests for like every possible outcome of a service. So make sure like all of the error messages that that service can give are giving those error messages at the right time, making sure that like manifest data of any different combination is coming through on OTA, and just making sure that we have instrumentation in place so that as we develop more services and add more things, we will know immediately if there's a regression or breaking change or just something missing, so that our customers can depend on a super stable set of services from the device side.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. Well, it's been cool to see that. And I'm actually going to be leaning on some of that work for testing out some new cloud stuff that we have coming next week. So um, definitely am glad that's in place and that it's easy to adapt to point to different places and things like that.
Yeah, exciting times. I feel like most of the time we get on here and we're like, I can't even remember what we did, but now we're getting
Yeah.
to the point where like big chunks of things are starting to fall into place and that we can actually talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like we were talking about this a little bit today in all hands, but my kind of ideal state of an engineering organization is where you are launching things like, almost every week, launching new features almost every week, while also having like some long-term bets in play as well. Because I think that when you really get into a place of stagnation or maybe like a dangerous place in terms of innovation as an engineering organization is where you lean too far to one side there. Because,
Mm.
not every feature can be built in a week. So if all you're doing is launching a feature every week, it may look from the outside that you're just launching a feature every week, because the longer term ones may be a big release as well. But if all you're doing is launching week-long features, your platform is probably not getting super meaningfully better. It's probably improving on the margins and things like that. But at the same time, if you're not delivering new things to customers, if it's more like once a year or something like that, that's also an issue. So if you can have kind of like both those irons in the fire, I feel like that's a good steady state for an org.
Yeah, and I think we're achieving that, so it feels great.
Absolutely. Well, cool. Well, I think we're a little shorter than last week when we had Jason on, and I'll chalk that up to only having 2 instead of 3 folks on the stream, which I do want to get some more folks on the stream. I think not next week, but I guess you'll be out next week. The week after that, someone internally I definitely want to have on the stream. Very excited to have them on. And also Chris is back next week, so maybe he'll sit in your seat next week. So lots of guests coming up that I think will be exciting.
Yeah, so stay tuned. Appreciate having you here.
Cool. All right. Well, I think we can go ahead and wrap it up. And Mike, I hope you have a great weekend and a great week off as well.
Thanks. Take care, Dan.
Cool. All right. See you, folks.